Everyone, so I'm Bronwyn and I'm from DICE. Is it DICE or DICE? What do we call ourselves? From Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering. And I have been with CPUT since I started lecturing in 2012 on a part-time basis, and in 2013 I had a class of, it was about 220 stat students. And that is when I realized that there's no way for me to do this without getting some help. And the help was technology. And I've just done more and more since then. And so that's why I'm sitting here. Because this semester, if all goes well, then all my assessments will be online. I didn't teach last year. I used technology, but for research students. I didn't give lessons like classes last year, but the previous year my midterms for all of my classes were online. I was hesitant to do a FISA online, so I was hesitant to do a final summative assessment online, but this year I'm brave. So this year we're doing that as well. So let's get started. Okay, so it's basically what I said. It revolutionized my life. And what I find is many people, let's just go into the slide mode. The view is present. Okay, so my life is not, and I think I might be a bit crazy because I get very excited about it. So I get really, really excited when it's like a new toy for me. The notion, and I actually wasn't surprised. It was actually, I got like when people say online assessments, many people think that it's just multiple choice, and it's so not true. That's absolutely not true. There's different ways. Multiple choice is very good though, but there's different ways to do multiple choice. Multiple choice, I still use multiple choice, but maybe at 10%, and I'll explain how I do that. What online assessments allowed me to do is it allowed me to flip my classroom. It really allowed me to flip my classroom. So most of my assignments are actually open book, or I don't mind the students seeing the material before the time, because what I find is it gets them to engage with their work. They are not trying to spot what the questions could be. I'm actually tricking them into preparing even more than if they thought that there's a question coming from this section of the work or that section of the work and that section of the work. I'm really giving them a little bit, and by giving them a little bit, I'm making them curious as to, well, what else can she be asking instead of just guessing. So it did that. And Daniela mentioned that the triangle, I call it Dr. K's triangle. I did TDP, not last year, the year before. And it was emphasized, the triangle is very important, and it is very important. And I find that with Blackboard, it does that. But now what I've got to keep in mind, and what I find works for me, is I know there's the learner outcomes. My teaching methods must really, because I want to assess online, and I'm actually very selfish. I want to assess online because it makes my life easier. It eliminates so much of my marking time, and I'm building up a library of resources that I can use year after year. But my teaching methods must actually be aligned to that. So in my teaching from day one, I'm aware that I must get the students to go online. So in my very first lesson, I'm telling them, with this assessment in mind that they are going to have to do, with the assessment in mind, I'm giving them the IT Center's help desk number, and I'm telling them, get your Blackboard password. And I'm already because where they say, what's that word where they say, where you give marks and it, so what's that, marks almost like promotes learning. There's a saying that they use, assessment, it encourages learning. So assessment also encourages the students to go into Blackboard. So you give them, I'll tell them, speak to me on a discussion board on Blackboard, and this is to eliminate their fear. Because as fearful as I was, I know my students are just so fearful, and if I'm expecting them to do an assessment at the end of the semester, then I need them to be over the fear of using Blackboard for an assessment. They need to feel that it's not going to put them at a disadvantage. And to get them to do that, from the word go, I'm I'm encouraging them by giving them 1%, 2% assignments or marks, graded discussions, to get them just to go on and to engage with me. So that is the triangle. It brings it back to the triangle. If I want them to do an assessment, I need to think about my teaching practices. There are technical issues. Before I get excited and I tell you about the questions and the different types of questions that I've used, there are some technical issues that I just wanted to bring up. I've been sitting with one of my colleagues in my department, and because we want to move her course online as well. And she's got a very theory-heavy course. But what I found is, before you can start actually building nice assessments, and we're not going to stop, we're going to move her course online, but something that she wasn't aware of is she didn't go to the Blackboard training courses, and she didn't know that there's a back end to your Blackboard. So besides that you see, you've got a filing system that looks a lot like your Explorer on your PC. So it really helps when you design these assessments and when you build up this material for you to use, to just know that there's a filing system in the back end, and if that filing system is neat and if that filing system is organized, then it makes the whole process a whole lot easier, and it makes reusing your stuff the next year a whole lot easier. I don't want anyone to be under the false impression that it's going to take away all the time. Maybe a 75% of the time that I would have spent marking, because more of the time now goes into the preparation. So it doesn't eliminate the bulk of the time, but it does eliminate a substantial amount of time that you would have spent marking. But the nice thing is you have lots of materials, a library, like I said, that you build up and you can use later. You also still need hard copies of assessments, and this is because of the exams office. We've got for a summative assessment, I think it's for all the departments, we've got to hand this assessment into the exams office. And so we still need, I haven't yet thought of a creative way to overcome. We're not going to overcome that unless the whole institution, I think, adopts online assessments. We're not going to get rid of that. So you still need your hard copy, you still need your memo, you still need to send this hard copy for moderation, so you still need to do all of that. But what I do is I do that, and then I put the assessment online afterwards. But then I have the assessment that you can later restructure, and you can use it as revision questions. Okay, so coming back to Bloom's taxonomy, we also know what Bloom's taxonomy is. It starts with the simplest stuff like remember, understand, apply, analyze, and shortly I did this table in a bit of a rush just before I got here, and I was thinking about the different types of questions. Now, I don't use respondents. When I started, respondents wasn't working so well with our system, and so I just learned to do things on Blackboard. So I never went back to respondents, but I believe, technology, just like Blackboard, has gotten much better. I'm sure respondents works really well. So my colleague is actually using respondents, and she just gives it a big thumbs up. So I'm still using Blackboard to create my assessments. And these are the questions, the typical questions, and I'm going to go through each question, and I'm going to give a bit of examples how I use each question. But I was thinking about Bloom's taxonomy and which question supports the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And most of the questions that are available on Blackboard supports every level of Bloom's taxonomy. Even multiple choice, a cleverly structured multiple choice question can support the create function. But it depends on how you structure the question. So there's that table. Then the multiple choice, there's nothing wrong with multiple choice. Like I said, I use about 10 to 15%. But when you ask multiple choice questions, what I typically do, 1 or 2 questions is straightforward multiple choice question. But I would ask the students, what is the most incorrect answer? And I'm going to give them varying degrees of correct answers. And in that case, you really must know your work. A multiple choice question isn't as simple as just collecting one right answer. Because if the answers are so similar, they're going to read it twice. They're going to read it thrice. They're actually going to think about it. Okay, so those are the simple filler connector questions. So these are the ones, the options that are available on Blackboard for those 1 or 2 marks. It would be multiple choice, fill in the missing blank, and fill in missing blanks. There's one in plural. Then there's jumble sentence. I've got the hashtag waste of time because I think it's a waste. It's just for the students to remember. I don't use that, but that's my personal opinion. Then there's either or. I do use the multiple choice, the missing blanks, and the either or. The downside with the either or is it's sad that I can't personalize it, because sometimes you actually want to it's something that is specific to your subject. And so there's maybe 2 options, and the sad thing is they don't allow you to do 3 options as well. If you have a 3 option question, like sometimes the student must choose, say for example, you're asking I'm going to make a silly example. You want to ask something about the campus. Where does engineering sit? Do they sit at Granger Bay? Do they sit in Cape Town? Or do they sit at Belleville? You know, okay, that is a stupid example because we have got more than 3 campuses, but you know there's 3. Sadly, there's not, that you must then revert to multiple choice. And then there's the hazy stuff. So I'm going to mention the stuff that I don't know before I talk about the fun stuff. So there's a calculated numeric, which is something that I use for my course. Now, I lecture stats. I don't know if I actually said I lecture stats. So I lecture statistics, and it would be easy. When I tell people that I have online assessments, and I tell people that I lecture statistics, they think that I'm asking the students to give me the final answer. And that is absolutely not the case. There are some times that I'd ask for an answer, but I think in only 10% of the questions, it's to give me the final answer. I'm interested in how they got to that final answer. And I think for a calculated numeric, it's not fair to the student to give the weight for that answer more than 3 marks, 2 marks, or 3 marks. It's just unfair. Because if the student were to do that calculation, you'd look at the marking. And so that's where the other types of questions supports that. Asking that kind of question. There's a calculated formula. I don't know what that is. The file response, it uses a rubric. I don't understand why that. There's the quiz bowl, which I think would be interesting for case studies. I haven't used that as well, but with my colleague who lectures management systems, she wants to know the who, the when, the why, and the how. And so the quiz bowl question is that type of question, but I haven't used that yet. And then there's the hotspot, and I can't wait. I've seen this question. I can't wait to be able to use it. It's a funky question. You basically show the students a picture, and they've got to select a hotspot on the picture, and you then ask them about the particular. So I find that interesting in a course like auditing, non-financial auditing, where you've got to audit a place and you may be interested in a specific area, or like that question with address. Okay, so this is the more complicated stuff, and this is the more fun stuff. So working with my colleague that teaches management systems, she asked me, Bronwyn, so how do I put these paragraph style questions without having to do a rubric for all of them? Rubrics are good. I use a lot of rubrics, and a rubric can be as simple as 2 by 2 or 2 by 1. And the rubrics help you mark. So you still have to go into Blackboard. You still have to read the question, and you still have to tick. But it's not different to ticking. And what Blackboard does for you is it calculates the marks. And when you download it, the marks are calculated, and you can upload that straight into Maths. If your class is looking the same and Blackboard is looking the same as Maths. But multiple answers, that's a brilliant way to ask questions. You could, and there, like with the lecturer did that, you've got to think of a lot of options. So you've got to, if you ask a student a question and you're expecting a paragraph, you would give the student, you'd break that paragraph that you're expecting. So you'd have your memo next to you. You'd break that paragraph that you're expecting into whatever the points are that you would allocate marks for. But then you add things that you know is incorrect. You add things that historically you've gotten from students. And then you tell the students, answer this question and here's multiple answers. And so they really constructing that paragraph using multiple ticks. And then the system marks that for you. Similarly, match the matching. There's a question where they've got a match. It looks like a table. So in hard copy it looks like a table. So connect this with that. One would typically use it for definitions. You give a word and then you'd have a definition. You could have that for variables of a situation if you're expecting a paragraph. Within that paragraph, there's obviously a story behind whatever you're expecting them. And you ask them to connect the variables. And the nice thing that Blackboard does is it gives you more answers than variables. You could say this is the variable and you can have a couple of different answers. So that is a clever way to get a paragraph answer from a student. There's also the short paragraphs, and then there's the long essay style questions, and that you'd use a rubric for. I've actually spoken about everything in the faster slides. So anyway, I'm sure I'm close to my 30 minutes. Let me finish up now.
No, we have time.
Let me finish up now. A good online assessment looks like a good hard copy assignment. It really does. It's got a mix of questions. So you've got the 1 mark questions, which is the symbols at the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy, where it's remember and just evaluate and just apply. And there you're going to use stuff like fill in the missing blanks, multiple choice. And then if you get more creative with your multiple choice, we go into the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And there we will also start using things like multiple answers or the mix and match. And then you've got to trust your system. Oh, another thing is when you design these questions, it helps to, this is just a practical tip from helping my colleague. Do yourself a favor when you're designing it, keep your questions, instead of what my colleague was doing is she was saying, she was the theme, the topic of a question, she was using that as the question title. And when you've got lots of questions and lots of different questions on the same title, it's just easier to go with question 1, question 2, question 3. So when you need to make changes, because you're going to reuse, Blackboard allows you to duplicate an assessment, and then you can change questions within the assessment. You can either change the questions or you can change parts of the questions. And in that case, it's easier if you actually labeled your questions, question 1, question 2, question 3, so you can go back and find it easily. Then trust your system. If you don't trust Blackboard, then you're really going to battle. I had a good friend who was a software designer, and I'd moan about Blackboard. And something that he said that stuck with me, it actually stuck in me, and to this day I actually think it's, if you trust Blackboard, sometimes it doesn't do what you're expecting it to do. But then when I stop and I actually check, then I find that, you know what, I was the one that didn't click a certain setting. I trust Blackboard totally and completely. And to really use the system, you've got to trust it. And that trust, you actually, you share it with your students. Your students start trusting the system. But with that, I find that a pinch of humility, actually not a pinch, quite a bit of humility goes a long way. My students also know that Blackboard is just a system, and the system is only as good as I am. And there are those nights that I'm working late at night and I make a mistake. And I still make mistakes. I still make lots of mistakes. But I tell them, listen, you guys, you're going to pick up this mistake. And if I made a mistake, tell me. Nice thing is, I fix my memo and Blackboard automatically recalculates all the marks for me. It fixes the question. And the students also think, they also feel quite good because they've pointed something out to me. So we're all really on the same team. And practice, practice, practice. And with the students also, tell the students, get the students, using those tips that I've used, maybe you can think of others, get them to practice and engage some more as well. Okay, and then the last thing, this is what I was so excited about 2 weeks ago when I called Daniela for my final summative assessment. Everyone's courses are different, so what works for me is not going to necessarily work for everyone else. But when I sat down with my colleague who's got a completely different, I've got this number-based subject and she's got this theory-based subject. And I also, the other thing is I teach research as well. So I've got master students and I've also got BTEC project students, which is like a mini thesis. And I use Blackboard for that as well, and I use it to assess their chapters for that as well. So the assessments will also look very different. Now, for a mathematics or a statistics exam, one would maybe give students a part of a case and tell them, okay, well, do the correct, I use control charts. So I give them some data and I tell them select the right control chart. This is on the paper. On paper it would be select the right control chart and then do all of the calculations and give me a final answer. With Blackboard, because it marks it step by step, and it would be unfair for me to ask the students, just give me the final numerical answer. I've got to think of clever ways of getting to the system to ask the students about each step that they've done, but without letting them know which was the correct tool that they had to choose in the first place. So what I've actually done for my final assessment is my last 3 questions, I've told the student to select the right tool that you're going to use to answer this question. So I've given them a bit of a case, select the right tool. If they select the right tool, they would get a password to open up another question. If they don't select the right tool, then they're not going to start the next bit. So my final assessment is actually 4 exams. So it's 4 assessments, but it's 4 short assessments. So one assessment, the last 3 questions of the one, ask them, what are you going to use in this case? The next one says, what are you going to use in the next case? And what are you going to use in the next case? They give the right answer, and then I comfortably can ask them those questions that will prompt the various steps, knowing that the student actually knows what it is that the student was supposed to do. Does that make sense? So there's those creative ways to get around doing things on Blackboard. Yeah.
But
So
you still have to do the exam in a vigilated venue.
they do. They don't actually, because my exam is open book. That's the other thing that I was going to mention. My exam is open book. And it's a statistics, and I give the students a case. I give the students a case. I've given them for my midterm. I'm actually going to, because my subject, it builds, it's constructive, so it's scaffolded. So what we learn this week, it builds onto what we're going to learn next week, it builds onto what we're going to learn the following week. So this is the thing that I've done for this semester. I've decided on a case, and it was actually based on when I was in industry. So it was my own experience. I consulted, and as a quality consultant, because I lecture quality, I was given a data set, and I was told, we don't know what to do with this, and this is what I want to train my students to do. So 3 weeks ago, I gave my students data, and everything that I'm going to teach them, so the different statistical tools, so from probability to control charting, process capability, hypothesis testing, regression and correlation, I'm going to get them to do it on that data set. There are other examples that I'm going to include as well. So as we go along, I've got my class notes which have different examples, but my students actually have this data set, and their online examinations is based on this data set. I can change one variable in that data set, and I expect them to know what to do. So that's why my exam is open book, in the sense that they have their notes available to them. They have the data available to them, but they know that I can change a variable in the data set, and then I would expect them to be able to deal with that, to manage that, as they would deal with it in industry. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
So you said you have your final summative assessment in 4 sections.
Yes.
Now, what if the student decide, okay, I'm going to skip section 1 because maybe section 2 I might be more clued up. Can they do that?
It's 4 tests. It's not 4 sections. So the first assessment, the first test, has got 13 questions. From question 1 to 9, you can do it in any order. They can see all the questions at the same time. The last 3 questions is telling them, and they can answer any question at any time. But the last 3 questions is, I've given you a bit of a data set, and I've asked, what do you use for this? And so they can say what they use for that, and they can do that for all of that. It's not going to influence them. If they know what to do with that data set, then they have access. And I've actually asked my colleagues to test this for me and tell me, is this ethical or not? Because I thought maybe there is a reason. I didn't think that there would be anything wrong. But it is basically just that screening question, because in my exam, to get the Blackboard to mark it for me to get away from marking, I need to be able to ask them questions on each individual steps. So they can answer all of those questions, and if they do answer, it's similar as if they would be writing down on paper. If they got to question 10 and they said that this is the tool you should use, I'm going to stop marking them because the rest would not be relevant if they got the tool wrong. So it is that type of principle that applies. It doesn't prohibit or not allow a student to open up a particular part that they could have possibly scored marks. If they got the first question wrong, then they would have gotten it wrong, whether they had written it or not. Because as lecturers, we stop marking it if the first thing that they said was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. So, and that just allows me to mark more fairly, so that I'm not, so that I can give students for the different steps as they go along. Yeah. Oh, and then I have my exams. I want to avoid having my exams, I think, could possibly be off-site. But I am not yet comfortable with doing anything offsite, so I book a venue. The first 2 weeks, when classes start, my colleagues and I get together, we decide who's got exams, what date, so that we don't have any clashing dates. And then I email at Belleville campus, we've got a nice, the IT center is really nice. I email Onelli Bloom, and Onelli books a venue for me. So I've got my venues for a month or two already. Onelli booked these 2 venues for me for the 22nd of March and for the 28th of May. And so that's sorted. The students come in. When they come in with this to do the exam, I actually give them at the moment I'm giving them a answer book. I'm giving them the exam because I need to have an exam that goes to exams office in any case. And it must be in my black file. So I'm giving them an exam and I'm giving them an answer book as they enter the venue. And they are allowed to use this answer book. They've got the exam. They can also see the exam, ask them the exact same questions as what they see on the screen. So they have an answer book, so they can even write on the answer book if they need to, and I collect that at the end. Because at the moment, I don't yet know. We're going to get audited. I don't know if I'm going to need that or not. So I'm still collecting that evidence. Hopefully one day when we'll do everything online. But at the moment, there's a bit of duplication. We're using both systems. And then also just with moderation. That's the other thing. My moderators can't yet moderate online. My moderators are still doing that. And then also, last, can I say one research?
You have time. Don't
Okay. So I also teach research. So for BTech students and for master students. And with research, it's assignments. And with BTech students, the research project is actually the assessment. So they don't sit for a formal assessment, but there's a lot of formative work that obviously takes place. So they do what we call a topic approval, then they do a proposal. I mark this online. Blackboard, you can build fantastic rubrics in Blackboard, really fantastic rubrics. And for large sections of work, like marking a proposal or marking a chapter of someone's work, it really makes marking so much quicker if you're reading and you're ticking on the rubric. And once you're done, and as you're ticking on the rubric, and you can give them feedback, you missed this, you said this, where's your reference? Your reference shouldn't look like that. And all you do is you press save, and poof, the marks are in an order that you can just upload it to Mass. It's really, 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 it has changed my life, seriously, for the better. And it has made me a different lecturer. It's made me I see myself as an online lecturer. There's no going back.
Do you have any questions for Bronwyn?
If there's any, and you have my details. If there's anyone that has, I mean, Daniela, they're all there, willing to help. But anyone that wants to mail me.
Are we going to do an example of uploading a question paper?
Well, not the Blackboard itself, how it works on Blackboard. You want to see that?
Yes.
Can you show from let me